Last week, the US Fed Reserve lowered its key interest rate by 0.25%. Nearly 99% of traders had anticipated such a result. Jerome Powell also stated that the presidential election results would not influence the Fed's actions. However, this is just a short-term scenario. US Fed officials may provide additional comments concerning future rate cuts. Some of them are set to speak in the coming days. Now, let us review the macroeconomic reports scheduled for November 13 and 14 and see how they could affect the Forex market. You're watching Traders Calendar. As other leading central banks are considering how frequently to cut the interest rates, the Bank of Japan has to navigate both inflation and deflation. To counter deflation, the yen should strengthen, which calls for a rate hike. Conversely, combating price growth requires a rate cut. With a month remaining until the Bank of Japan's next meeting, current situation growth in Japan supports the yen. Thus, a rise in the producer price index to 3% could prompt a decline in the dollar-yen pair. Also, this day, the United States will disclose its inflation report, which may show an acceleration to 2.6%. In this light, the US dollar may gain value. Meanwhile, core inflation is projected to hold steady at 3.3% in October, since the indicator failed to meet expectations in September by rising to 3.3%. A settlement on this level would send a hawkish signal for the greenback. Notably, analysts had foreseen a rise to 3.2% in September. Also, on November 13, Russia's GDP and inflation data will be released. The preliminary GDP report is expected to show a slowdown, with the growth possibly dropping from 4.1% to 2.8%. Since the currency's strength is linked to its economy's performance, a smaller growth could weaken the ruble. For the ruble, a GDP drop could outweigh the impact of a high inflation. While the Bank of Russia raised its key rate to 21%, inflation is unlikely to fall, and further increases are plausible. However, the head of the bank claims that a higher key rate does not lead to price increases. According to her, sustained economic expansion is unachievable at the current inflation levels. Thus, the Bank of Russia will continue its efforts to achieve its 4% inflation target, but the ruble is unlikely to gain strength following the November 13 reports. The dollar's position may fluctuate by the end of Wednesday's session, with the US Fed officials set to speak. Markets will scrutinize the comments on future rate auctions. Please note that the time of publications is set in a GMT plus 3 time. The next video review of Traders Calendar will be released on Wednesday, November 13. See you!